The French and German governments are demanding an explanation from Washington following allegations US intelligence services have been spying on European Union offices. There's actually been very little detailed comment from the United States so far, but the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has said the American government will respond appropriately through diplomatic channels. Let's speak to our correspondent in Washington, Jane Little. Jane, until there's a specific denial from the US government, we have to suppose that these claims that come from Edward Snowden, published in Der Spiegel, are true. So therefore, the question is, how much do you think the NSA director, the general who's head of the NSA, is talking to Barack Obama and saying, Mr. President, this is what we've been doing? Do you think the president knows?
Well, that would lead me into speculation that I daren't go down that line. But I would say, yes, I'd agree. There was clearly no denial. We have had this short statement today saying the US will respond appropriately through our diplomatic channels, saying they're not going to comment publicly, but adding the United States gathers foreign intelligence of the type gathered by all nations. In other words, we all spy. And we heard that from the former director of the NSA and CIA earlier today on a talk program this morning, saying basically the Europeans should look first and find out what their own governments are doing. In other words, it's spying as usual. This is clearly a backlash of a whole different magnitude now against the US, because before we had people very upset about this wide-ranging, huge in scope surveillance program, but now we've got European leaders, outraged allies and friends saying, what are you doing snooping on us? And if these allegations are true, it could severely impact relations. So this has taken things to a whole new level, and as you suggest, there's been no denial.
Yes, of course. When you say that it could impact on relations, we're talking about the beginning of negotiations of a free trade deal between the United States and the EU. But we're also talking about Edward Snowden and all the information that he presumably has hidden somewhere. The fact is, until they find him, and even if they do find him, he may have passed that information on to a whole load of other news organisations and it'll be out there forever. There could be a lot more to come.
There could, and that was suggested today by the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, suggesting there would be more to come, that the US can't stop it. So on the one hand, the US has been embarrassed and deeply concerned by these revelations because it said it's directly damaged national security, that Edward Snowden has been giving information to terrorists, as the Obama administration would put it. But now with these allegations, it's about jeopardizing relations with friends and allies. And you mentioned this free trade agreement. That's huge to both sides. And we've had comments today from Europe suggesting it could now be in jeopardy, because how do European negotiators not know whether their offices are being bugged by the US? Are they trying to gain an advantage here in those trade negotiations? So there's clearly a lot of suspicion. A lot of trust has been damaged here with key allies. We're not enemies, they say. We're allies. What are they doing? So the US is now on the back foot, will clearly have to rebuild trust, rebuild bridges with its friends.
Jane, thanks very much indeed. That's Jane Little, our correspondent in Washington. To Pakistan now, where at least